Reconcile.
All right, we're here to talk about a couple, actually, of the Starfall Legacy hilts. Now, I was super stoked to see that Nick at Starfall got to do this run with a few of the industry professionals in order to make this something that's in a low quantity but of a high quality. And so I got in on the run. I have yet to install my own. So I thought it was very nice that I got a chance to do not one, but two of these legacies. And these came with the crystal chamber upgrade. So Nick did a little bit something special on each of these. Go ahead and show this one off. Now, they're a little bit different between the two, but I am going to go ahead and demo these together. Normally for different clients, I wouldn't do that. But because these are similar enough in all the rest of the features, I wanted to go ahead and show that off. So let's hop down to the table. Let's show off what went on with the electronics for each. We'll go over a little bit of the chassis details, some of the programming aspects for each, and then we'll hop out and I'll show a few more blade effects and blade styles for this install. Thanks for checking it out. All right, now I don't normally demo two different customers' sabers at the same time, but for the purposes of the demo, I thought this would be a great opportunity to show off what I did to make these two different while making them very much the same. So this is the Starfall Legacy. But these two both came with the crystal chamber upgrade. Now, Nick did something a little unique on each of these. So this one is for Jerald. This is the first of 50. So Jerald was somehow able to get Nick to do the first of these in a dark theme. And I'm pretty sure this was powder coated by the factory because this is very clean. On this one, I tried to match the copper style. Now, I don't really have a rub and buff copper other than Spanish copper, which is a lot darker. So I tried to mix mine here with antique gold to get close. So it sort of matches the brass in the crystal chamber here. But yeah, we've got a resin greeblie chassis. On this side, I've got an 80 millimeter filament, I believe in red on this one. And then just a bunch of greeblie work with some hand-painted details in color. And you can sort of see those little pops of color here and on this button array, such like that. So we have a fully enclosed 28 millimeter KR bass speaker, high amp kill switch Proffie 3.9 running OS 713. Config is on the SD card. We've got a row of 2020 NeoPixel strips under this vent greeblie that's been rub and buffed in kind of silver with a mylar strip for diffusion. And it is subbladed into 3 independent blades. So you can choose to do what you want with those. I think for the most part, I've got them mirrored, but on a few presets, they're all independent colors. We do provide a 18650 battery with the wrap here, but in the battery tray, you can see the Starfall logo with the positive terminal clearly indicated. Now, of course, spring side your negative. So what you want to do is put the flat part of your battery up against the spring, nipple to the nipple. I will recommend the users exercise extreme caution with these crystal chambers. Nick was only able to provide about 5 millimeters of nipple depth. And because these are printed in resin, they can be very brittle. I use a ABS style resin, so it's a strong resin, but this is a fragile connection. So there is a set screw here. When you go to put the battery in and out, you can sort of just pop it out very easily with the grip off. But when you go to put the battery in, I recommend gripping with your extra fingers here and then just carefully pushing down. You don't want to pull out. You can end up stripping this set screw, and then just it's a press fit right now. anyway, just take some caution there. So if the kill switch isn't already engaged, when you put the battery in, you can turn it on. Now, Jerald did have me load up this with sound fonts, so this one will react a little bit slower than this one. Yeah, we've got 2 dome tactiles. Now on this particular one, I'm also sporting a Shadowfoil emitter PCB with the 3 inner rings subbladed as well, all doing their own thing. And there's a Shadowfoil NeoPixel accent array under here, 6 NeoPixels. It's the same as this, although the center is not engaged on this one. Here we go. Here's an example of, I don't know how well it is because I've got all these lights on, where these are 3 independent colors, but then we have our little inner and outer rings. So these are programmed to be different on this array. So you can see that inner pixel is doing one thing, and the outer is doing another, and then that Edison filament does something in the off state. So let's put this off to the side, watch it animate, and we'll turn this one on. So here's this one painted in a different color scheme with a different crystal chamber. Nick asked me to do something a little different, gave me some creative license. This was basically fully open. So what I did was put a brass mesh, and then behind the brass mesh on the copper rods that hide where the wire goes through, I put 2 5 count of 2020 NeoPixel accents, the same NeoPixel strips that are under here. So these are 15 divided into 3. So these are also 5. But those are right there, and they will do some interesting things. So this one, if we take this blade plug out, sports a stock V4 Eco. So it looks similar to the Shadowfoil, but it doesn't have the ability to subblade out. So we'll hit the kill switch. You can see there's less of a delay here because there's not as much on the SD card. You can also see I just kind of did a different color scheme to match the aesthetics of this particular hilt. And we got a different battery wrap for that reason as well. But everything else in terms of the accents, the programming is the same. Now this, I did a blue Edison filament instead of a red. So that's a little different. So those are the main differences. This has an additional set of strips and a different color and a different emitter, but for the most part, these are nearly identical in every other aspect. So if we turn these on, I'm going to turn it on muted. So if we just double tap, top is main, bottom is aux. So now we can see everything animate. So there you can see the pixel strip going now. And then this will react to clashes or blaster blocks if I hit the auxiliary button, if I can find it underneath. Now, not all of the programming will respond. Some of my blade styles I simplified, but for the most part, everything does react. So this is just going to mimic what the blade does on this particular saber. The number 1, if we turn this one on, again, that's turned on muted. So now we can see a different animation in the on state. But it has its own programming, right?
Battery level.
So the very last preset is the battery level indicator. And what I've done is I've turned off all of the chassis accents and just did the crystal chamber and the emitter to go from green to red, green being fully charged, red being not as charged. When the blade is in, there will be a bubble tip. Bubble out to the tip is fully charged, and as it depletes, it will go towards the hilt, and it'll go from like a blue or a green down to red. But you can always get a readout by holding aux and tapping power.
Battery level 92%.
So I did Hu Yang on this one, and I want to say I did the Bendu on this one. These are set to time off at 5 minutes. So if you have them displaying like I do now, after 5 minutes, if you don't do anything with the saber, the lights will go off and it'll go into a sleep mode. It's not a deep sleep, so it will slightly drain the power, but you can always hit the kill switch. If you want to re-wake it up and still play with the saber, then you need to hit power. So let's show off a few different blade styles on this one while we watch this one in the background. Again, we've got a few extra pixels here. Now, for the most part, the strips for most, if not all of the presets I've left off, so it's not overwhelming here. But there's a few that will turn on, but it's basically when the blade is on, you'll see these guys go. And they do different things in different presets. I tried to mix it up across the styles here so that not everything's the same, but for the most part, the crystal will always match the blade color for each preset. That is the Starfall font package. So you can see the Shadowfoil NeoPixel array doing its thing. And then I do have the Edison strip. It's a little subtle on camera, but if it's doing a audio flicker during the on, you'll be able to see in person. And then if you do blaster blocks or lockups, you'll see it get a little bit brighter. It's hard to tell because I've got ambient lighting to show off all the features. So again, we've got 8 Starfall fonts, and then the final is the battery level preset. And then for this particular hilt, all the chassis strips, except for the crystal, will turn off in the battery
level.
So we can see we go from green to red in both the crystal strips and the crystal, but everything else on the chassis and on the hilt is off. When the blade is in, you'll see a little tip indicator. That is this. Again, the config is on the SD card. I do provide additional fonts on the SD card as well, but they're not all programmed in, so you can edit those with edit mode. I won't cover edit mode here, but it will be on the printout. This is running the FET263 prop file.
Starfall Celestial Inferior.
And again, with this Shadowfoil pixel underneath the crystal, you'll see the rotary effects in the defects of the crystal. It's very cool. So a lot more animation in the crystal. Again, I just double tapped to mute it, or to start and mute, I should say.
Hero's Journey.
And each of these do something different in the on and off state. All right, so when we're ready to use the saber, we'll put the grip on carefully. Now, do note that there's a inner diameter change here. So we want to be careful when we go to put the grip on. But the nice thing is it feels great when everything's zipped up. We'll go ahead and put the blade plug back in just for a second. Now, what's really awesome about both of these is that 28 millimeter has about this much resonance chamber, and it sounds awesome. Now, that was a green blade, so through the red, you're going to basically get like a cancellation effect. So you can see it's green there, but it doesn't look like it's lit up. But when I do like a blaster block, you can see it light up. So that's just something to note. Some colors, when they go through this diffusion, don't appear illuminated, but they are. So I don't have these cranked super hot. This is running at 2250. I generally try to do a balance of volume and clash reactivity. That being said, these are super hot as is. So we have gesture controls. You just saw me do swing on this one. You also have twist off, twist on. And then you have thrust on, which is a forward movement. All right. But you can always hit the top button for power. So let me go ahead and show off. This is, I'm using this as your blade retention. You could also use this set screw as blade retention, but there's no need. I've got this set to where that's perfectly acceptable. So again, this NeoPixel emitter just mimics what the main blade's gonna do. These take a 1-inch diameter NeoPixel blade. I have them set for 32 inches. So that is the Saber. We'll go over a few more things with the blade in. Anything that's not covered, again, will be on a printout for the owner. So again, we've gone for 5 minutes here. So if I wanted to wake these up, hit the power button, and now I can wake it back up. That's a 5-minute delay. So if you don't want to drain the battery at all, you can always hit the kill switch and then store it long term. So that is the Starfall Legacy. And again, we'll show off a few more blade styles with the blade in and maybe a few extra features here, but that'll pretty much cover everything we need to. Okay, so we talked about the resin greeblie chassis. We made sure to address a little bit of caution there. It is a fragile connection, so when you're taking the grip on and off, be very cautious. But with the grip on, not only does it feel solid, it sounds great. Hopefully you heard that up top. Maybe you heard that down at the table with the grip on. It's just, Nick did a great job with his designers of getting all of the aspects of not only his kind of typical scrap flex styling, but a great resonance chamber, some awesome appointments. This came weathered. The other one came powder coated. And so yeah, so let's go over a few of the presets. Now up top, I showed off Reconcile, which is kind of a High Republic theme. And given that this has those High Republic appointments, I wanted to kind of show that off. But to recap, on the switch box, we got 2 dome tactiles. Top is your main, bottom is your aux. To go forward in presets, you'll hit the aux in the off state. To start and stop the track, the designated track, we want the Saber to be upright. We'll hold the power for 2 seconds. We can start and stop when the blade is on, but we have to be upright. Oops. Okay. When we're sideways or horizontal with the blade off, we're going to get into track player mode. Now, I've loaded the SD card up with a few extra free fonts and the default Proffie fonts, but I've only programmed the Starfall font package. However, all of the fonts refer to the common folder for where the tracks are. So I've loaded it up with a bunch of extra soundtracks. So when you get into track player mode from any preset, you've got a lot to choose from. So we'll do the same thing. Hold power for 2 seconds. So that's a little Easter egg there. But if we rotate one direction, we're going to go backwards. If we want to keep playing that track, we can hit either aux or power. Those do different things, and I'll let you read on the printout what that means. But it'll now let me move the Saber around without changing soundtracks. But again, we can turn it on and off by holding power for 2 seconds. So again, with the blade on, we can start and stop, but we can only start and stop the designated track in the upright position. And of course, this one's a little quiet. Shut that up. But in the off state, you can be in any orientation to turn the track off. You just have to hold it for 2 seconds. Now, with the blade on, if we are any orientation other than upright, we're going to engage a force or a quote. Now for the Starfall font package, they're called the same file name, so they're all called force.wave or force2.wave, but they may have quotes. I believe the Reconcile, I think it's just sound effects. So if we hold power for a second, you get that sound effect. Now it's hard to tell on camera, but I do have an unstable blade style that will occur as long as that sound effect occurs. See if I can show it on my wrist here. Some of the other blade styles, one of the other blade styles will do a little different than that, but for the most part, I let it go unstable for just as long as a sound track plays or a quote plays. If you decide to add fonts later on, you can switch between force player and quote player if you point the hilt down while the saber is on. Again, that'll be on the instructions, but none of the Starfall fonts have different file names. So they just have to be in the correct file folder under quote with quote 1, quote 2, quote 3, .wave, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll just flip back and forth just like we would the soundtrack, but we have to be pointed down. So that's just something to note for when you go to add fonts in the future. That feature is already turned on. You just engage it that way. Okay. But when we use our gesture controls to turn on and off, we're going to get into battle mode, and that'll just makes it easier to get in lockups. So we got twist on. So if I clash the saber, but I don't move the hilt right away, I get a lockup until I pull out of that position. Now, lockup is also what you showed up top. Melt if we're pointed sideways, drag if we're pointed down. But if we use the power button, a clash is just a clash. If we want to engage a lockup, we have to hold either power or aux as we clash. And for as long as we hold the button, we'll stay locked up, okay? So same goes for melt. Okay? And the longer you hold it, the more animated it gets. There it goes, you can see it now. But gesture control just means that battle mode turns on, and it's a little easier to do that. If that's not what you enjoy doing, then you can always just use the power button on and off. Okay, so show off a few more presets here. Okay. I tried to show down below, but all of the chassis accents will do something different. If you do get into color change mode, by holding aux and tapping power with the blade on, just be mindful that all of the chassis accents will change to whatever you do. So if you don't want that to occur, then you can change the color with edit mode. And edit mode is accessible when the saber's off. You just hold both buttons for 2 seconds and then it'll ignite, get into edit mode. I've got a printout that shows all of the various steps to get into edit mode. It's pretty lengthy, but what I've done is set the main blade up first so that if that's all you want to change, you can get to that pretty quickly. But again, we can show that off by holding aux and tapping power. Now I've got the OS Brian Connor voice pack for the Bendu on this one. It's Hu Yang on the dark.
Orange, red.
And then he'll announce the colors. If you want to accept it, press power. I don't, so I'm just going to hit aux and it'll revert, and he'll say revert.
Revert.
And then we're out of that change mode. The only preset that does not occur on is corn horn, which is the next. And that means we just go back and forth between a kind of white silverish color. It's a little bit blue, and then it'll just wipe to purple. So again, that's holding aux and tapping power. And then you can see that on my arm, it wiped up from white to purple. I did also program that into the crystal, but nothing else. So the crystal will always match as well. So you can see that's purple. And now it's white. Okay? But again, everything else just stays what it is on this particular preset. So that's going to cover most of it. I do want to show battery level indicator. So let me get there.
Battery level.
Okay, so now we're at the battery level, and you can see, I didn't mention it, but this takes a 1-inch diameter blade. It's programmed for 32-inch length. I'm actually using a 7/8 with an adapter because I have a KR pixel stick in it, and it just shows up better. But that being said, the further out to the tip it is, the more it's charged. Since it's programmed for a 32-inch length, When it's at the very tip, that's 100%. If you just want to get to a percentage with the OS voice pack, you can hold aux and tap power in the off.
Battery level, 90%.
So that can change if you've got things on and off. That's just a rough estimate, but it'll give you something to think about. You'll probably hear the speaker crackle as it gets way down into like the 20 or 30% range before you actually see this come down, or that'll probably be your first indicator. So you can just pull the removable battery out, put it in your charger, and then pop a new one in or whatever you need to do. But that is it for this. Again, anything I don't cover in this video will be in a printout. And to both customers, I appreciate your patience on this. I hope you enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy the way it sounds right now. I can't wait to install mine, but I've got to install a whole bunch of other people's first. So we'll see if we get there. But any questions to the customer, please feel free to email me. And to the rest of you out there just watching this for fun, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you enjoy it.